The Jaguars led by star quarterback Kelvin Perkins, looking to improve to 6-1. Now, they made a pretty deep run in the playoffs last year. They were 13-1. Only loss was deep in the playoffs. I talked to Jerome Griffin, their head coach, about that, about how that motivated them this year. And he said that he thinks that this team is more disciplined, and they've been on it since the summer. So the Jaguars looking to go back to the same place they were last season, maybe beyond. Except for like Major Wright, I talked with him yesterday. He said last year they were really young. They've got more experience now. Guys have grown up a little bit. They're 5-1. They, like I said, have already won as many games this year as they did all of last year. So a pair of 5A teams, both off to really good starts this season. I'll have a preview from Southwind High School coming up on Action News 5 at 6, and that full menu of games coming up on Friday Football Fever tonight at 10. Let's jump over to the college gridiron. We just mentioned a little bit before, our Griffin Desmarais is on the road to Columbia, South Carolina this weekend to watch his Ole Miss Rebels try and bounce back after an ugly loss to start SEC play against Kentucky last week, 20-17. I was there covering the game, and just a really tough one for the Rebels. They came in as, I believe, like 15-point favorites. Definitely expected to take care of business. Now, I will say, people that have paid attention to college football this year, I think most of us thought, Kentucky's defense is good. We saw what they did against Georgia in Lexington a couple weeks ago and thought, they can maybe give Ole Miss some problems, but with the way that the Ole Miss offense looked for the first 4 weeks of the season, I think a lot of people just figured, well, they have too much firepower. They're going to put up points, and just never happened. Couldn't get the run game going. Their first drive was just absolutely clinical. Marched down the field, had great tempo, scored a touchdown in, I believe, like 2.5 minutes. Kentucky had no answers. And it was all pass until the last play was a 1-yard touchdown by Henry Parrish Jr. And then they did not have a drive that looked that good the rest of the day. Their only other touchdown came, gotta give Lane Kiffin credit. He went for it on like 4th and 8 near midfield in the third quarter. And when they were trailing, I think they were down 13-10 at the time. Jackson Dart hits Trey Harris, who's just a beast, especially with the ball in his hands in the open field. Hits him on slant. He houses it from like 48 yards out. The Rebels take a lead, and you think, okay, they're going to kind of stretch it out now. And they didn't score a point the rest of the game. Kentucky connects on the 4th and 8 at their own 20. They go on to score the game-winning touchdown. Ole Miss misses the field goal in the final minute. That would have tied the game, potentially sets it to overtime. So we've talked about their college football playoff aspirations. I still think they're alive, but if they have one mulligan left, it is probably against Georgia, and that's it. You cannot lose tomorrow.
No. In last week really just goes to show nothing. You can't take anything for granted in the SEC, especially with what we saw with Kentucky. Took Georgia to the limit, and we know Georgia's got a crazy offense, as we saw in the Alabama game. Literally anything can happen. Even Vanderbilt gave Missouri a tough run.
Your boys hung in there for the first half against Texas.
They didn't cover, so we're good. But yeah, it's just there's nothing easy in the SEC, even if you think you're going to cakewalk through it. And I think really Ole Miss probably wasn't prepared for this caliber of opponent because they've walked through the beginning of the season. It's the strategy is you get off to a hot start and you get rolling, but when you haven't played this competition, it can hurt when it comes to reality because they haven't played a defense nearly on the level as Kentucky until Kentucky showed them what they're about, really.
Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart were asked about that post-game, about, was your schedule too soft? Because you go from Furman, Middle Tennessee State, Wake Forest, a bad Wake Forest team, yep, and then Georgia Southern to Kentucky, a bowl, at the very least, a bowl caliber SEC team. I mean, that is a big jump in competition. Lane said, basically, he's not going to overreact, but it's a fair question. Mm-hmm. Jackson Dart gave a little shrug and said, hard question to answer. We had a chance to win it. We did it. To me, the non-answers kind of spoke for itself. Yeah. I think the answer is absolutely yes. The soft schedule did not do them any favors when it came to play Kentucky. Now, I don't know if that's they weren't prepared. I don't know if it's they were feeling themselves after the first 4 weeks. I don't know what it was, but I have to believe that played some sort of role in what happened last Saturday. I didn't think the game plan was very good either. Struggled to run the ball for a lot of the game. Jackson and Lane, they like taking deep shots, and don't get me wrong, it's part of this offensive identity, and they should keep doing it, but those Kentucky defensive backs were all over those receivers like a blanket last week. So at a certain point, you got to switch it up. And you think about the Trey Harris touchdown, came on a short to intermediate route, and you let him get in space, and he does the rest. So, but again, give Kentucky's defense credit because they're legit. Their front seven gave Ole Miss a lot of problems. So, got to give them credit, but at the same time, the Rebels lost a game they shouldn't have and put themselves in a position where, listen, I mean, if we're going to talk about another one of these SEC teams that's firmly in the college football playoff conversation in just a second, but for all the talk of how many teams is the SEC going to get into the college football playoff, you're probably maxed out at 5. And I think that 4 spots right now are pretty comfortably taken. So if you're going to be the 5th seed, and again, a lot could happen. We are a long way from the finish line in that regard. But if you're going to be that 5th team, you probably got to win out, except for maybe you can afford to lose at home against Georgia. But, Ole Miss is 9.5-point favorites going to South Carolina tomorrow. That feels like a lot. Again, I know they're really talented, and I don't think it's a fluky team. But I also think South Carolina is pretty good.
I think South Carolina is another agent of chaos that you really don't want to see when you're trying to turn things around, because the flip side of piling a bunch of easy games on the beginning of your schedule is now you have a really tough rest of your schedule. And you're right, they can't afford to take any games off. They really can't afford to lose this if you want to talk about college football playoff. Obviously, it's not a given that they're going to lose to Georgia, but Georgia's really good, really talented team that is going to take you to the brink if nothing else.
You want to talk about...
So 2 losses in a row this early in the year would be pretty disastrous.
And I get every week is its own week, but you want to talk about Kentucky's defense? South Carolina went to Lexington and beat them 31-6.
Wow.
Week 2. Now, granted, things change. Every week is its own week, but we remember that. You talk about them being agents of chaos, the LSU game, which was a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
But you saw they're talented. They feature Rocket Sanders, who Arkansas fans will remember, really dynamic running back for them the last couple of years, among others. So, I don't, listen, could Ole Miss cover? Yeah, in theory. The bookmakers are generally smarter than us. But South Carolina, I think, is going to be a tough test. And that's not an easy place to play. So.
I love what Shane Beamer's building down there.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I think that's a program that's probably on the upward trend right now.
Yeah.
They've been pretty poor for a while. But I like what they're building. I don't think you can take any game against them for granted.
Not at all.
Especially, they're a couple plays away from being. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, they're 3-1, and they could easily be 4-0.
Yeah.
Very easy.
4-0, right?
So, all right, that's that. It goes out to say Ole Miss has to win tomorrow. They probably have to win the rest of their games, except for maybe against Georgia, to keep any hope of the college football playoff alive, because much like Memphis, they put themselves in a hole by losing their first conference game right off the bat. One of those teams we just talked about, I think, is one of the 4 firmly in the college football playoff conversation right now from the SEC. The Tennessee Volunteers, up to number 4 in the country. I think that's well-deserved. 4-0. They're coming off a bye week. They travel to Fayetteville to take on the Razorbacks tomorrow. It's kind of a battle of a couple of their Mid-South teams. There's a lot of Razorback fans in the area, a lot of Vols fans in the area. But, I mean, Knoxville is far, so is Fayetteville. Fayetteville's not as far as Knoxville. But, yeah, man, that's going to be a good game. And, we have one really awesome quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. Or Iamaleava, sorry. I got Iamaleava. I had the first pronunciation in my head for a while.
Reverted back to it.
Iamaleava. Yeah, Nico Iamaleava against Taylor Green for Arkansas, who we've talked about a couple times on this show. Just as far as physical gifts go, is just through the roof. Got to rein in a little bit. Kind of raw, but fun to watch.
There was a lot of that last week. If you watched the game against A&M, there was a lot of it. There was a lot of poor throws. He made a lot of incredible throws.
Yeah.
And the main thing, I think, is just the protection is not there.
Yeah.
And I don't think he responds well to that pressure at this point. But he's a good scrambler. He's a good thrower on the run. Just got to clean up the mistakes. And if he does, I mean, maybe a hot take. I think Arkansas is talented. I think they could give Tennessee a run. I wouldn't project them to win or even cover, but in theory, could it be 1 or 2 score game? I think definitely. I think the Hogs are talented, especially if Green has a big game and limits those mistakes.
Tennessee.
And his line predicts for him.
Tennessee's 13.5-point favorite. So, like a 2-touchdown game.
That's about what I would expect.
I can see it either way. Also, if you look at Arkansas' schedule, I mean, we've talked about how brutal it is, but they're 3-2 right now. They're probably one upset away from going to a bowl.
They could easily be 5-0 right now.
Yeah.
They had a few chances to beat A&M last week. A&M just kind of pounded it on the ground at the end and just took the game away. And then they took Oklahoma State to the limit, double overtime. They really could easily be 5-0 right now with a couple plays swinging the other way.
Also, A&M is considered a neutral site game. I think they were technically the home team for that. I get it. Yeah. Jerry Jones, they played at Jerry World because of him. I got to imagine that kind of felt like a road game a little bit. Yeah. I could be wrong. I wasn't there.
It felt more of an A&M crowd. Yeah. But, yeah.
But so they've got, the rest of the way, the Hogs have Tennessee, LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas, Louisiana Tech, and then their rivalry game against Mizzou. So not going to be easy, but if they can pull off one upset in there, and then if they beat, respectfully, if they beat your boys, which feels likely, and then they take care of business against Louisiana Tech, it gets them to 6. And then all of a sudden,
I like their odds of making a bowl game this year. I think they're talented enough. I think it's definitely possible that they pull off one of those upsets.
And like
as well.
if Taylor Green plays one really crazy game where it's all the good stuff and very little of the bad stuff, I mean he's talented enough to definitely lead them to an upset what he seems. I think for all the talk about the doom and gloom around the program and whether Sam Pittman was going to make it through the season, I think if they make a bowl game, Sam Pittman's probably saves his job for at least another year.
I think so. I think.
Especially with that schedule.
At least my opinion on Arkansas has kind of flipped through this year. They've looked good.
Yeah.
They've had stretches where they struggle, and especially they got to fix that offensive line. But, I kind of like where they're going with that team.
I don't know if they're a good team, but they have surpassed my expectation. Like we talked about, the schedule. Yeah. It's important they got off to a good start because if you're sitting here at 2-3 even, staring down the barrel of that schedule the rest of the way, then things could get gloom pretty quickly. But 3-2, like you say, took Oklahoma State to double overtime, had a chance to beat A&M. Yeah, there's enough reason for optimism there. Tennessee, we'll just hit on it again. This is a firm college football playoff contender to me. Absolutely no questions asked. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They've got weapons to go with it. Heupel. We know what a Heupel offense can look like with a great quarterback at the helm. We think back to a couple years ago when Hendon Hooker was running the show there. So, I expect them to win tomorrow, and I expect them to be firmly in. At this point, I would be shocked if they did not make the college football playoff because of how good they've looked all the way around.
And we really saw against Oklahoma, their defense really showed up when the offense struggled.
Yeah.
So if they get both of those meshing at the same time, they're going to be really tough to beat. And at this point in the schedule, really, after the Georgia-Alabama game, I've pretty much circled every Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama game as a must-watch at this point 100%. Because those teams are really fun to watch. Maybe not Georgia when they're up against the Kentucky defense, but that was probably the game of the year. Alabama-Georgia last week.
100% so far. I said my hot take. I don't know if you agree with this or not. Ryan Williams, 17-year-old star receiver for Alabama. I said, you could put him in an NFL game next year. If he got drafted next year, I think he could. I don't know that his body could hold up to the rigors of a 17-game NFL season, but I think you could put him in a random NFL game and he could probably produce. To a reasonable level. I'm not saying you're going to drop him in next year and he's going to be a star, but my God, is he good. We've got a couple of superstar true freshman wide receivers in college football right now. With him, and then Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State is an absolute star as well. Jeremiah Smith is actually 18 years old. Ryan Williams is still 17. And the movie hit on the movie hit on the touchdown last week, the dead leg spin,
incredible,
and it just outraced that defender to the end zone. It was nuts, nutty move. And then real quick, Memphis is on their bye this week. They take on USF next Friday. I hope both teams have fun. If you know, I'm a USF alum. And then your boys, Mississippi State, is on a bye as well.
Much needed.
Yeah. Like you said, they covered against Texas with a true freshman quarterback.
Honestly, it was competitive for a half, which is about all you can ask for.
Yeah. I don't think Texas played their
number
best,
one.
But yeah.
No, even though they didn't look their best, I was still impressed by Arch Manning in the fact that his receivers dropped a couple deep balls that – if they had, his stat line would have looked really good. Because they were open, they just did not catch the ball.
Hey, Ron, you want to talk Cowboys?
Oh, we can't talk about the Dallas Cowboys right now. Come on. I'm still in mourning over the last couple of games. But
y'all won last week.
Yeah, the Giants.
Yeah.
We should have like just
W's a W.
annihilated the Giants.
They didn't, and they
barely squeezed
and
by.
and you talk about good teams win, great teams cover. They didn't cover.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But I'm still a Cowboy fan. Always will be. Win or lose. Hey,
It's like me with the Jets. We're beacons
there
of
we go,
pain.
buddy.
It's all good.
And I'm already working on my "we'll get them next year" line.
There's always next year.
You always got to have it in the canon.
Celebrity
with the
appearance by
Cowboys.
Ron Childers here on Fast Five Sports. We appreciate him. All right, let's shift gears. We are going to the hardwood because that NBA season is right around the corner now, man. The Grizzlies just finishing up training camp this week in Nashville because of renovations at FedEx Forum. I was there for the first day of camp. The preseason begins on Monday. They go to Dallas for that. I think they have 5 preseason
I've
games.
got the preseason schedule here.
Please, bring it up. You are
available
always
for
prepared.
us.
Beautiful.
So obviously Dallas is going to be really interesting. Just the Mavericks coming off of finals appearance.
Home against
Charlotte, that is what it is. Chicago is kind of in a rebuild year. And then Indiana is a really fun squad. Also coming off an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. And then Miami, it's going to be interesting to see what they do this year.
Yeah,
so
this feels like kind of a pivot
A
year
couple
for
fun
them.
games on that schedule.
So I was at training camp on Tuesday at the Ensworth School in Nashville, and I'll tell you what, I'm intrigued to watch the preseason this year because we've heard a lot about some of these new assistant coaches that the Grizzlies have brought on. 2 in particular, Tuomas Iasello. I'm not sure that's the perfect pronunciation. I'll get it down at some point. And Noah LaRoche. So Isaello came from PSG France. His team won the Euros this last year. I think historically one of the most efficient offenses in the history of Euro Cup basketball. And you watch some of their clips on YouTube, some of their highlights, and it's fun stuff. And Noah LaRoche is kind of the head of player development, but he was with the Clippers, I believe, and he used to coach at a D3 school that ran this kind of wild 5-out constant motion offense as well. So the Grizzlies have talked about it. Taylor Jenkins acknowledged the other day they need to get better in the half court because that's ultimately been their downfall the last couple of years, especially in the playoffs, because as long as Ja Morant's on the floor, you're always going to be a dynamic transition team. And the defense has not been a problem the last couple of years, but the half court offense has let them down, especially in settings where that's a necessity. So we talked with Ja and Taylor Jenkins at camp the other day about just how different this is going to look and what we can expect moving forward.
A lot different. Not too much stagnant offense. Not too much. Just watch a guy. It's a lot of movement. I'm seeing a lot of different looks now. I'm getting a lot of catch and shoot opportunities, back cuts, catch on the run. So I feel like it's plays right into my hands and allow me to get better looks and don't have to create so much.
The amount of movement that we're going to have off of the ball is going to be significantly different. We had a decent amount of movement in the past. A lot of it was predicated on drives or ball screens, but involving more cuts is going to be a big key. More backdoors, more relocations, things of that nature. Where when the ball's moving, everyone's moving in sync.
So a couple things there. I think that the Grizzlies have kind of the perfect personnel to play. I don't know if they'll be 5 out at all times. I think they will be sometimes. I sent Grizzlies Twitter ablaze the other day with a video of Zach Edey just making it rain on corner threes at practice. Again, my golden rule is if they are shooting wide open shots in practice, or if they're running routes on air, or if they're running back, I'm not putting too much stock into it. And
The Ben Simmons
The Ben
rule.
Simmons, yes, exactly. And I remember going to football. I remember before the Jets signed Dalvin Cook last year, and there were videos of Dalvin Cook doing cuts on a field by himself. And it's like, okay, this doesn't mean anything in terms of how it's going to look in the actual game. I'm not putting too much stock into that. I'm not expecting Zach Edey to all of a sudden turn into a Brook Lopez-esque three-point shooter as a center. But maybe at some point down the road, could he at least pose a threat where if he steps out there, you have to honor it? Maybe. We'll see. I'm curious. I want to ask Taylor Jenkins about that at some point, whenever we talk to him next. But think about something else that Josh said at the end of that clip was he's not going to have to create as much because a lot of times the last couple of years when he's been healthy and the offense has stagnated, it's been call 12, which I get it. Call 12 is effective, and he's one of the most dynamic players in the league. And you put him on an island with most defenders, they're not going to be able to guard him. It's tough. It's tough to win. You could maybe win a lot of regular season games like that. It's tough to win 4 playoff series where the majority of the offense, when things break down, is call 12. So I think making his life a little bit easier is going to be important. You think about some of the guys, just the versatile pieces that they have in terms of being able to pass, dribble, and shoot. Marcus Smart, even something like Desmond Bane obviously took a big step in that regard last year, created for others, getting to the rim. Vince Williams, I think, showed some of that ability last year. Gigi Jackson, whenever he gets back. Jaren, I think, took a pretty big step in terms of his passing last year. So I think that this is going to be fun. There might be, Taylor Jenkins said, there might be some bumps at first because it's a totally different system. But I think that I love that they looked themselves in the mirror and realized what they were doing in terms of their half-court offense was not working. It was not good enough. Let's bring in some ideas that might be, I don't want to call them radical because I just think that it's just very different than what they've been doing. And I just love the idea of being open enough to bring in some of those fresh ideas and challenge them and maybe unlock a whole nother level for this offense. Because if they can even become a league average half-court offense, maybe a little bit better than that, combined with the fast break transition offense that Ja automatically brings by himself and what they've been able to do defensively, now all of a sudden you're talking about a team that can be really scary.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a system like just let Ja cook works in the regular season.
Yes.
You can get away with it a lot of times, but when the playoffs come, you're going to get crushed. And really, it's still, we talk about the new pieces, but it's still Ja's team.
Yep.
And we saw last year, before everybody was injured, it was Ja was out first, and that team really struggled without him.
Yep.
So they really need him. He's got to have a big season. And it's kind of a shame that we were stolen of that last year because he's been on a nice upcline every year.
Yep.
And then we get robbed of a season, so now it's like backtracking to can he be better than 2 years ago? But it's his team, and the depth pieces are going to be helpful in the playoffs. With the multiple ball handlers is something a lot of teams are leaning on. I really think Edey can be special in this team because he's got a role. He doesn't have to be a big piece of the team right now. He's got to do the things basically that Jaren Jackson is not good at: rebounding, staying under the rim. And that allows
do like the
Jaren
Steven
to-
Adams kind of stuff,
right,
with a little more offensive pop.
right. And I think they missed Adams a lot last year. And yeah, Zedi is
ZD.
Zedi. There's
That's
a
probably
free
the first time
nickname.
we called that this year.
Free nickname. Edey is a good offensive player. That's what he was known for, obviously in college. But he doesn't have to be that guy. And I think a lot of guys straight out of college are asked to be that guy, and they fail. So I think over time I could see him being a significant player in the team. But as it stands right now, he's not really going to be asked to do a ton offensively.
I think
It's
that
protecting Jaren ultimately.
and setting screens that open up a highway for Ja.
Right.
And I'm on record. I said before the draft I wasn't a huge fan of the idea of Edey, but when I listened to Zach Kleiman at his press conference the night they took Zach Edey, but we talked to him afterwards, just hearing the vision that they had for him made the light bulb kind of go on my head. Like, okay, this might actually work, because he talked about, Edey being the anchor while you let Jaren roam as a weak side defender, which was what he was so good at last couple of years when he won Defensive Player of the Year. And he said something interesting in terms of, so much of the NBA now is teams, you're always trying to react to what teams are going to do. You're always trying to answer to, different strategic moves that teams are going to make. At a certain point, Zach Edey is a chess piece that other teams are going to have to account for, because I'm telling you, he might not be someone that's taking 20 shots a game, but I promise you, when he's on the floor, if you try going small ball against the Grizzlies, he'll punish you. Like, he will.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get away with putting a 6'9" dude on Zach Edey and think that he's not going to just put easy buckets on your head. It's going to happen. He doesn't, and that's not something that requires a ton of just effort or scheming up. If you put little dudes on him, he's going to score, and he's going to grab a million rebounds over them. The question has always been, how does he defend in space? How does he defend pick and rolls and whatnot? Looks like he slimmed down a little bit, and I think the Grizzlies believe that his foot speed is adequate to guard in space, and
playing next to a former Defensive Player of the Year is
Yeah.
going to make that a lot easier for him as well.
100%. So
We saw, I mean, especially in the playoffs, I think, maybe the Grizzlies are kind of taking the method of teams with Jokic are not putting their best player
Yeah.
guarding Nikola Jokic. They're putting another big man and letting their best player roam the rest of the floor. I mean, obviously I'm talking about Minnesota, who defeated Denver.
it's going to lead to our next topic. Let's stay on this for a second.
But you can use that same format, just swapping Rudy Gobert with Jaren Jackson, and now he's free to roam.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot harder to score in the paint when Zach Edey is over there guarding your best player.
I forgot if it was Zach Kleiman or Taylor Jenkins. They said this week, too, part of the equation putting together the roster is projecting who are going to be some teams that are going to have to go through in the West in the coming years, and how does that fit? To me, whether Edey, as far as that fits into the Jokic equation, try to take down Denver is one thing. I see what you're saying. I agree with a lot of that. I think Edey is going to be a big piece for the rise of the Spurs against Wemby, because now you have at least a body. Listen, I think Wemby scored on anyone, but at least now you have a 7'4" body that you could throw at Wemby and make life a little bit tougher.
Yeah. And we're really kind of moving back to the era of having two big guys down low.
Just big guys that are skilled as well.
Granted, they have to be able to move. They have to be able to go around the court in space and not mess with your spacing. But obviously Minnesota,
Let's talk. Minnesota made a big trade this week. Our team. I'm sure
I
you
think
know
we're-
by now. I'm a Knicks fan. He's a Timberwolves fan.
I think we're uniquely qualified to talk about this trade, and I really want to talk about it.
We can. Okay, let's do
But
this.
I want to get your thoughts first on, if you want to do it this way, you can give your thoughts on what Julius Randle brings to the Timberwolves, and then vice versa with Cat on the Knicks.
Yeah, so I think, listen, I was cool with trading Randall. I shed a little tear when I saw Dante DiVincenzo was in that trade, too. That was a tough one.
Yeah, he's a big piece as well.
I just want to say, as a Knicks fan, I've got all the respect in the world for Julius Randle. I will always hold him in high regard, because Julius Randle signed with the Knicks on the first day of free agency in 2019, which was the day that the Knicks were spurned by Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and they were kind of the laughing stock of the league. And here comes Brooklyn, the other team in the city that, frankly, no one really cares about, is going to go on this run and win these championships while the Knicks continue to be the laughing stock. But Julius Randle, we didn't know at the time, was the first building block into what the Knicks have become now. Really, he loved New York. He epitomized a lot of the toughness that this team now stands for. So, man, I'm sad to see him go. Wish him the best of luck in Minnesota, but I said Knicks fans should hold him in high regard forever. As far as on the court, it's an interesting fit for me because Julius has become a much better shooter the last couple of years. He could still bully you down low. I think that at times Julius can be a little bit of a ball stopper, especially in the playoffs, which
My biggest fear.
which could be frustrating at times. I do sort of wonder the fit between Randle and Gobert in the front court. That's kind of an interesting one to be. But as far as floor spacing goes, I think Julius is not the shooter that Cat is. Cat probably isn't considered the best shooting big man of all time, just out of respect for guys like Dirk and whatnot. But the percentages say that Cat is firmly in that discussion. Mm-hmm. So he's not quite the same shooting threat that Cat is, but he's a perfectly competent shooter. It's just that, man, Julius has games where it's awesome and you love him, and then there are games where he's stopping the ball, he's throwing up a bunch of shots and bricking them, and it could be a frustrating experience at times. So I would say just prepare for that. DiVincenzo, I think, is also. I think DiVincenzo is probably Minnesota saying, okay, we need a little more backcourt depth and firepower besides a rookie in Rob Dillingham and Memphis legend and Mike Conley. He was getting a little bit older, still a really good player, but probably not someone you could depend on for all 82, I would say, in the regular season and then getting into the playoffs and whatnot. So I certainly understand why the Knicks did it. I'm not thoroughly convinced either team won the trade. This is one of those that's going to be a real wait and see for me. I think I will say on the Knicks side, since Leon Rose and this front office took over a couple years ago, there have been a lot of moves that they've made where in the moment I said, this is terrible. This is a bad move. The one that comes to mind recently was when they traded R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly to Toronto for OG Anunoby. In the moment, I thought that was a bad move. Loved IQ. Even if R.J. didn't quite live up to the billing of a number 3 pick, thought he was a solid player and he played really well for Toronto. I thought that was a bad move, give you up 2 players for 1 in Anunoby, but guess what? It was the right move because Anunoby was a perfect fit for the Knicks, and his injury in the series against Indiana was honestly, in my mind, probably the difference in the Knicks winning and losing that series. So I trust his front office. I never thought I'd say that about the Knicks front office, but I trust his front office, but we'll see because I don't think it's clear-cut either way.
It's so funny because almost everything you said kind of applies to Minnesota in a similar way. Cat is the guy that came to the franchise in a rough period.
Yep.
He stayed through a lot of rough times, and Minnesota fans really love him for that because he never requested a trade, and that's unheard of for any Minnesota Timberwolves star, minus Garnett, but he was kind of forced out. But yeah, so the thing is, my initial reaction is, oh no, what's happening? Why are you doing this? Because you're blowing up a team that just made the Western Conference Finals, second time in franchise history. But again, what you were saying with the front office is Tim Connelly. Everyone clowned him for the Gobert trade, and maybe rightfully so because the haul was huge.
And the first year didn't go well.
He took an enormous swing. The first year did not go well. And it really paid off this year because they were the number 1 defense, I think, by a wide margin. Yep. All year, they had the best defense in the NBA. So from that aspect, I'm trying to trust the front office. There's a lot more that went into it rather than just 1 player for 2 players. It's the second apron, all that entails. It's not necessarily a salary dump. It's more of anticipation of we have to fix all these salaries and all that entails. The second apron is going to be so interesting, especially with a team like Boston, who's basically locked into that roster.
Yeah.
Boston pretty much cannot make a move. If they have a major injury, they're just kind of stuck with that roster.
No, the second apron is really debilitating.
So this is a second apron move. They're avoiding being unable to make any moves, just stuck with that roster because Randall has 1 year left on his contract. I don't imagine he's going to sign a long-term deal with Minnesota. I think he has a player option for about $30 million next year. So maybe if he has a poor season, he picks that up. I just don't envision a scenario where they pick that up. But the move's also a big
player option.
Right. It's also a big endorsement of Naz Reid because he's there for the long term. Naz was gone if they didn't trade Cat. There was no way around it.
I think it's got to be a big
with the salary.
I think it's got to be a big endorsement of Anthony Edwards too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, everything they've done is building around Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, it's a big bet on Anthony Edwards.
In the DiVincenzo deal, really,
DiVincenzo is one of the best contracts in the league.
He and that backcourt are going to be incredible together. So I'm really excited about that. But all that to say, I think it's a good move on paper, but then you're moving Cat, who is such an integral part of the team. And he gets a lot of flack for whatever, not being tough or how he talks in the media and
changing his voices.
a million different things. But when you watch this guy, he just does things on the court that most people are not able to do. Obviously, he's a lethal shooter. I've seen him cook some of the best centers in the league.
Yep.
Shout out Anthony Davis, who he seems to own every time they play.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't see how it could not fit with that Knicks roster because Cat is not going to be a guy that's going to demand the ball every time.
Nope.
He's really never been that, even when he was the number 1 option. But it's going to be Brunson running the offense.
Yeah.
No question about that. And really, Cat's there to be a lethal shooter and to attack the rim when he needs to. And that Knicks starting 5 is awesome right now.
Yeah.
But the 2 sides of the trade, it's awesome starting 5 with no depth to now a really deep team because Minnesota's bench suddenly looks really good.
I'll push back on no depth. For our depth,
not no depth, but you're losing your best bench piece now.
Yes, 100%. I think that there's kind of 2 sides to this in terms of the high-end star power, and I think it goes both ways. I think that getting on a couple things for the Knicks. What apparently they really like Karl Anthony Towns, and they've wanted him for like a year now. And I imagine Tom Thibodeau, who those two clashed in Minnesota when he was there, but apparently they've squashed all that and they're all good. So TBD if that's true, but I can't imagine they would have made this move if there was any hesitancy in that regard. The Knicks will not have Mitchell Robinson for the start of the season. I think that they felt like they needed someone who could truly play the 5. I know that they floated the idea of Randall playing some small ball 5 and Precious Achiuwa, Memphis Tiger being the 5. I think they felt they needed someone who could truly play that position night after night, which Karl Anthony Towns can. I also think that they looked at the roster and said, Jalen Brunson is awesome. Can we win a championship? Can we beat a Boston? Can we beat a Denver? Can we beat whoever else is coming out of the West? Can we beat a Philly? Which I think the answer is yes. But can we beat these teams if Jalen Brunson is our best player and Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, or Mikal Bridges is our second best player? And I think they probably landed on the answer was no. So I think that they felt like they needed some more high-end star power at the top of the roster and were willing to sacrifice a little bit of depth for that. And I will say, I think there's been some questioning from Knicks fans. For me, it's not a question. Again, with all due respect to Julius Randle, Karl Anthony Towns is a relatively significantly better player than Julius Randle, like without question in my mind. That is someone who I'm not saying Karl Anthony Towns is going to be the best number 2 option in the league, just like I don't think Jalen Brunson is the best number 1 option in the league. But when you have those two at the top of, like you said, an awesome starting 5.
Surrounded by guys who are really good on defense.
Yes, and fit their roles. Yeah, I understand the trade from that perspective. And I think for Minnesota, like I said, it's kind of a bet that, okay, Anthony Edwards is going to be good enough as a number 1 option that we can downgrade our number 2 option a little bit and still be really competitive in the West.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel.
I think so. And Minnesota also has 2 scorers surrounded by guys who are really good on defense. It's going to be interesting. I think the DiVincenzo move might free up.
God, that hurt.
I think that might free up Mike Conley to not play as many minutes this year. Obviously, Dillingham is there. I think it's kind of insurance on if Dillingham takes a while to get going.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a 19-year-old rookie. We've got Dante in there because that's kind of really the extent of their point guard situation is Conley, Dillingham. And not that DiVincenzo's not really a point guard, but I think he can fill that role a little bit in a pinch.
It will be interesting. NBA season starts in just under 3 weeks.
It's scary, but yeah.
I believe the Knicks are like the 4th favorite to win the championship. I think the Wolves are still top 10, so there's still some belief in the Wolves. But
I think both teams' odds went up after this trade.
that tracks.
Yeah.
Again, it's really interesting. I think you could ask 10 different people who won the trade. You'll probably get 10 different variations of who it was and why. So it's going to be interesting to watch throughout this year and for the Knicks. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns going to be there for a while, so in the coming years as well. Man, let's shift to baseball playoffs.
Can I throw a couple stats at you for the baseball playoffs?
Yeah, let's go.
So I a couple numbers on the Tigers win last night, or 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago.
2 nights ago. So the Tigers took down the Astros.
Yep. The Devil Magic is over.
I know you saw this one, but the $18.8 million salary.
Yep.
The Tigers salary less than Josh Hader made. Josh Hader
blew game 2.
Gave up like 5 base runners.
Blew a lot of saves this year. Rough
Yeah.
first year.
So on August 11th, the Tigers had a 0.2% chance to make the playoffs, and they are the 4th team to ever make the playoffs after being down 10 plus games.
I saw
at least
this on
110
SportsCenter the other
games.
night. Yep.
Right. The 3 other teams all won the World Series,
Including the 2011 Cardinals.
2011 Cardinals, most recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, they've just been, we talked about it, just a crazy run for the last nearly 2 months at this point. They sweep the Astros. They go to Houston. They win 2. It wasn't shocking that they won game 1 just because Tarek Skubal is that dude.
Yeah.
Going to win the AL Cy Young this year. Shut down the Astros lineup. They got to Framber Valdez early. But, man, I said for a team that young with that little playoff experience to go to the house of the team that has frankly been more successful than any other team in the sport the last decade. And you could say what you want about the Astros 2017 World Series ring. That's fine. At the end of the day, in the last under 10 years, they've won 2 World Series. They've been to 7 straight ALCSs. I mean, this core of players has played in a million of these big games before. And them at home, you think there's no shot once the Astros take the lead in, I think it was the 7th inning, that the Tigers are going to have a counter punch. And they had a haymaker response. They put up 4 in the top of the 8th inning. And, yeah, just wildly impressive. And I'm at the point now where, listen, baseball is littered with stories. And, we've been a fan of a couple of them in the Cardinals, of teams that sneak in or get hot late and they get in and you don't think they have a chance to do any damage, and next thing you know, they're hoisting the big trophy at the end.
Momentum is just so important, and this is a team that sold at the deadline.
Yep.
They got rid of their second best
Flaherty,
pitcher.
The best player on the market, probably.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Schoolball's awesome.
Yeah.
Their bullpen's really good.
I think, I don't want to say this is the Astros' downfall, but I think they're kind of at a crossroads now.
Oh, for sure.
Bregman's a free agent. Verlander's a free agent.
Verlander wasn't even on the playoff roster either.
Right. Right. I mean, I think he probably wasn't lined up to pitch any of the wild card games regardless. But, yeah, he didn't have a great season, and he's 41. So
I agree. This could be the end of...
I don't think it's a lock that he comes back. He said he wants to play another year, but I don't know that Houston's going to be urgent to bring him back.
I mean, for the Astros' dicey years now, it's basically just, Altuve, Bregman if he comes back, a little bit of Jordan, and am I missing anyone? I think that's basically it. This could be the end of the Astros.
Altuve is, I don't know how many years he's got left. It obviously hasn't slowed down yet, but...
Nah, he was really good again this year, which is nuts. Because he's 34, and he's just been consistently so good, man.
Yeah.
Altuve's a Hall of Famer, I think.
I would agree to that, yeah.
Yeah, Altuve is probably a Hall of Famer, especially because,
he's been there since the tanking Astros days.
He's a 9-time All-Star. He's a 6-time Silver Slugger. He's won 3 batting titles. He's got 230 home runs, over 350.
I don't think it's a stretch to call him one of the best second basemen of all time.
Yeah, really. At this point, for sure.
Not the best.
And again,
he's up there.
And again, he was solid again this year, like 2020, above average OPS. So yeah, but they're at crossroads for sure.
So another series that ended last night.
Man,
Pete Alonso,
as good as it gets. Woo! Playoff baseball at its best.
Another stat that comes up every so often: every team to beat the Brewers in the playoffs has made the World Series.
Yep.
So congrats to the Mets.
Congrats to the Mets. So for those who don't know, I'm a Cardinals fan. Full stop. Like, that is my favorite baseball team. I will say, the Mets are my hometown team. I've been to more Mets games than any other team. My dad is a Mets fan, so in any game where the Mets are not playing the Cardinals. So, like, the 2006 NLCS was tough because I had to root against the Mets. But when the Mets are not playing the Cardinals, I'm rooting for the Mets. And if you have a problem with that, I don't care. it is what it is. Like, I can't, like, I've been going to Mets games since I was 6 years old, even if I'm a Cardinals fan. So, then I was FaceTiming my dad last night. My dad was actually out to dinner, and he said he got back and turned the game on in the top of the 9th inning. So apparently that was what the Mets needed to turn their luck around, because things were not good for 8 innings, but then they came alive in the 9th. They put up 4 off Devin Williams. Pete Alonso, staring down maybe his final at bat as a Met. He's a free agent after the season's over. They haven't agreed to a contract extension. Who knows if they do or not. And just comes up with the most clutch
I think the
home run
price
of his
just
life.
went up a few million.
Maybe a
after
little
that one.
bit. Comes up with the most clutch 3-run homer of his life to give the Mets the lead. They tack on insurance run, and then David Peterson, starting pitcher, comes on for the save in the bottom of the 9th. So, yeah, man. I come from, my last job was in Wisconsin. I know a lot of Brewers fans. I've covered Brewers games. This is what they do in the playoffs. They I tweeted, they kind of pee down their legs in the playoffs every year. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Speaking of peeing down your legs in the playoffs, the Orioles now have the 4th longest playoff losing streak of all time. The longest all time, just recently snapped by the Twins, was 18. The Red Sox lost 13 in a row in the 80s and 90s. And then the Phillies lost 11 in a row from, I don't know if this was a typo, but 1915 to 76. That's a long period without a playoff.
That's tough. 60 years
but
between
yeah.
playoff wins, 61 years. That's tough.
That's brutal. So the Orioles,
Orioles bad this year, man.
my World Series pick, just
yeah,
take
gone.
to that right away.
Mine's still alive. Padres advance in 2 games.
Me
over
and
the Braves.
Griffin already lost one of our standing on business picks. So.
Who did Griffin pick the Phillies in the?
He had the Astros.
He did have the Astros. That's right. I'm
Yeah.
still alive. My pick made it through the wild card round. I will say the Orioles wildly disappointed because last year it's like, okay, this is your first playoff run with this young core. You lose to an experienced Rangers team that got hot at the right time. Getting swept at home by an even younger team than you and the Royals with less playoff experience than you is tough. So, yeah, I think the Orioles' long-term outlook is fine, but yeah, that's tough. There are going to be some tough discussions this offseason for sure. And a bunch of their best players, including Gunnar Henderson, did not show up. So, yep, tough way to go out. So we have 8 teams standing. We have the Yankees facing the Royals. We've got, Padres-Dodgers is going to be an
That's
awesome,
gonna be
awesome
electric.
series.
Yeah.
Maybe a possible revenge series for the Dodgers from 2022 when the Padres knocked them out. Mets-Phillies is going to be great too. I promise you, as someone who grew up in New York,
That'll be
there is
fun.
plenty of hatred between those 2 fan bases.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a lot of fun as well. And then, man, who would have thought who would have thought this at the beginning of the season? 4 AL teams standing, 3 of them from the Central. Tigers,
Yeah.
Guardians, all AL Central matchup as well. So
3 division matchups left out of the 4.
yeah, the only one that's not is Yankees Royals. So I'll just give quick thoughts on all of them real quick. Yankees if the Yankees don't make the World Series this year, I think heads might roll. If they have another playoff disappointment this year, given the path that they're on, it's going to be really, really tough. So, start at the Royals and then the AL Central teams between the Tigers and the Guardians. We shall see. Padres, Dodgers, I picked the Padres to go to the World Series. So I'm sticking with that. The Dodgers obviously had some time off, but that hasn't really been a good thing over the last couple of years.
We've seen the teams that breeze through that wild card round. They have the momentum, like you said.
And the lack of timing from City out as well. So, I think that's going to be fun. Mets-Phillies, again, listen, Phillies are the
That's gonna be
favorites,
fun.
but the Mets have got some magic to them right now, so we'll see. I would probably, on paper, pick the Phillies to win that series, but again, the Mets have some magic to them, and they've been playing games. And then
Momentum's a crazy thing.
Tigers, Guardians, I think the Guardians are better, but the Tigers have the magic right now, so it's tough to pick against the team with this kind of momentum in the Tigers, so it's going to be a fun round. Again, playoff baseball just does not disappoint. We saw it last night. We've seen it throughout the week with the Tigers, what they did in Game 2 against the Astros, so I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of October plays out. It should be fun.
And also a lesson to Brewers fans, quite literally don't poke the bear, because there was a clip of them trashing Pete Alonso earlier in the game, and then he cranks a home run and
Fan base
to send them home. Just don't poke the bear.
Respectfully,
Don't poke the polar bear,
'cause
literally.
I have a lot of people I like up there that are Brewers fans, so I say this respectfully, but the 0-time World Championship fan base got to pipe down a little bit in October. You ain't done anything, man. Ain't done anything ever, really. All right, let's talk about our team that's not doing anything recently, at least. Done a lot in their history, but all right, so the Cardinals' disappointing season, second straight disappointing season, comes to an end. It must be said, this year was better than last year. They actually finished above 500 this year. 83-79, I believe. Yes, 83-79, but not good enough. Missed the playoffs once again for the second straight year. And in their kind of exit interview press conference on Monday, they announced that John Mozeliak, who has been the GM there forever, seemingly, is going to the last year of contract. As he has said, he will not return after that last year of the contract. Chaim Bloom, who... So I first knew who Chaim Bloom was when I entered the Rays. He was the number 2 to Eric Neander in the Rays front office. Became the Red Sox GM. Didn't work out for reasons that weren't really his fault, just in terms of ownership kind of pinching him with money. But he built up a great farm system with the Red Sox. But he becomes a special advisor for the Cardinals this year. Actually saw him at AutoZone Park a couple of times, kind of observing the minor league system and how things need to be fixed. But he's going to take over as the new president of baseball operations, GM, whatever you want to call it. But actually, because they do have a GM separate from president of baseball ops.
A technical GM.
Yes. But Chaim Bloom is going to be at the head of all this starting in 2026 on a 5-year deal. So I'm excited about that.
So I don't know where you're at with this delayed start process. So they say it's because they're saying it's because they want to have Bloom take a year, build up the player development system. To me, it feels like the same old Cardinals where we're kicking the same can down the road, because we saw last year they didn't make a splash in free agency. They went and grabbed a few guys that could eat innings.
Was Sunday not a splash? Semi-splash. I'll give them that.
I mean, it was a good move. They deserve some credit.
I'm not
grabbing
going out of
Sonny.
my way to give the Cardinals front office a ton of credit.
I'm not going to give them any credit for Lance Lane and Kyle Gibson, because we knew who they were.
Yeah.
They had seasons that
Yeah.
we could have saw coming a mile away. They 8 innings, and they had ERAs over 4. I mean,
Yep.
so this to me feels like more kicking the can down the road with the same thing you got. It's another year where we know things are going to change afterwards, and it feels like Mozeliak's just kind of hanging around, where we could kickstart this thing a little bit sooner and get Bloom in there now. I don't see why he couldn't revamp the player development with being in the president role.
This
you
is
know what I mean?
the DeWitt family doing him a solid and letting him go out.
It is.
On his
Yeah.
own terms, I guess. I don't know. Coaching moves.
Still
Ali
feel good
Marmol
about
will be
it.
back as manager. Turner Ward, their hitting coach, announced today, or I don't know if it was officially announced, but it's being reported that he will be gone. Dusty Blake, once again, will return as pitching coach. And the roster in 2025, I think, is going to look a lot different. There's already reports from The Athletic that they're parting ways with Paul Goldschmidt, who is a free agent this winter. I think it's the right move. I don't really know how you can.
It doesn't feel good, but it's the right move.
Here's the thing. I think that 25 is going to be a year of transition, where they are going to give young guys a lot more playing time. They're probably going to phase out a lot of the veterans. I'm fine with that. I don't really know what contract makes sense to bring back Goldie on, especially when he's coming off the worst season of his career, and you've got guys that need to play in those spots. You play Alec Burleson at first base, and does that free up DH for Jordan Walker? And just a bunch of different moves around the roster that could be made. But this article from The Athletic from KD Wu last week talked about how the Cardinals for so long were ahead of the curve when it came to using analytics to find players, diamonds in the rough that no one was really paying attention to, and how to maximize players they already had. And now how they've just fallen behind the curve, they stagnated while other teams like the Dodgers, for example, and a lot of others, the Braves, the Astros, picked up the amount of emphasis that they put into analytics and staffing. And that's something else that the Cardinals talked about, that the article talked about, was that the Cardinals minor league staff now is just woefully inadequate in terms of numbers, and it's affecting the player development. And you could see it when guys get to the big leagues, is that they're not fully ready in a lot of different regards. So they're going to refocus. I think the biggest thing that Chaim Bloom is going to start doing in 2025, they said, is revamping the minor league system and the player development so that these guys are more ready when they get to the big league level. But
they're choosing to spend there rather than on payroll.
yeah, listen, let me say this, though. I think the DeWitt family has this idea that there's some small market team that doesn't rake in any money. Let's be clear. St. Louis might not be the biggest market in Major League Baseball. That team is one of the most profitable franchises in the entire sport, one of the most valuable franchises in the sport because of their history. And they are in a city that is baseball obsessed. And up until this year, I'm kind of happy that Cardinal fans stopped going and rewarding them for putting a mediocre product on the field. Up until this year, the fans showed up and showed out no matter how bleak things looked. This thought that they need to cut costs or that they need to take money from the big league roster, dedicate it to minor leagues, miss me with that. They're prioritizing profits over pennants. But that being said, it is good that they are at least going in a different direction and going to reset the same bit.
So here's where I'm at with this, because I keep hearing the word reset and not rebuild.
Yep.
So here's my concern, especially with Mozeliak staying on and Bloom not coming in yet. There's 3 guys on the roster who are on the wrong side of 30 who are making big money, who were signed as win-now moves, who probably don't fit into this roster.
Sonny, Arenado, Wilson Contreras.
Yes, you nailed it. When he was in Boston, whether it was the right move or not, Bloom made the trade to send Mookie to the Dodgers. You could argue that was the wrong call because Mookie's still incredible. But But from what we've seen out of Mosaic, I don't know if he has. I don't know if he's got it in him to make those kinds of moves, because we've seen the Cardinals hang on to guys or let them rot and then trade them for pennies and suddenly become
Yeah.
all-stars. So I'm kind of concerned that we're going to be stuck with these three guys on the roster this year on a team that's clearly not making the playoffs, which they've basically admitted to.
Yeah.
Admitted to, we're not going to aim for winning this year. So it kind of doesn't make any sense to leave those three guys on the roster.
If I'm a contending team, I'll call about Wilson Contreras above any of those guys, I think. Because Wilson, when he was healthy last year, was awesome. I mean, one of the best. He was the best hitter on the roster, period, when he was healthy. It was unfortunate he broke his forearm and then he broke his thumb. I think
Yep.
he got hit by a pitch. When he was
Yeah.
healthy, he was awesome, though, this year.
He was great. Sonny Gray was great, too. I mean, he
Sonny
struggled
was a
at
little
points.
Sonny was a little up and down, but overall,
Still a 200 strikeout guy,
Yeah.
and compared to the rest of the
oh, yeah.
the starting rotation,
Anyone want
I think
anyone
he
want
would-
Miles Michaelis? 12-pack and maybe
crickets.
maybe a meal from McDonald's
Crickets.
or something?
Does Michaelis have 1 year left, or okay?
He has 1
I
year
think
left.
that's probably just one that's gonna rot.
One merciful year left.
I think that's probably just gonna rot, and you just let it
No,
play out.
you gotta eat the L on that.
I think Sonny would get a big haul. I think Contreras would get a big haul. I think a team probably looks at Arenado and goes, "Yeah, I could probably fix him,"
yeah.
and that might be true. I mean, with where he's at in his career.
Well,
His pop is gone. He could still he's still hitting the ball, but he's got no pop left, which is
Those
concerning.
33. Yeah, he hit 16 home runs last year. 101 OPS play. He was not a good hitter last year.
No.
But the glove, I think, is still generally there.
Yes.
So if you think you can get him closer to what he was at his peak as a hitter and you're getting the glove, then yeah, I can see it. But yeah, I think trade those guys if you can.
I think
it's
you've
probably
got,
the right
I think
move.
you've got to.
But you know why they're calling it a reset and not a rebuild? It's really hard to sell a rebuild to fans. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to publicly say.
But the reset makes me think we're gonna keep some of these guys around, and I'm kind of concerned about that.
Yeah, I do. I'm just glad. I believe in Hein Bloom. You know,
I do
Hein Bloom,
too. I do
Hein
too.
Bloom is a good evaluator. He was with the Rays for a lot of years when they were making shrewd moves that the rest of the league wasn't making. Again, I think he was pretty good in Boston. I think he was hamstrung by ownership financially, but to be fair, he might be
for
here
sure.
too. But I think that he's going to give the Cardinals something they don't have. All right, let's talk NFL real quick. You want to talk coaching hot seat, do you not?
Yeah. So stop me if you've got more names on here, but I kind of identified 3 names that I think are probably pretty hot right now, and that is Zach Taylor for the Bengals, Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, and I think Brian Daboll is probably on the hot seat as well. I don't know really. A lot of these teams that are at the bottom of the standings right now are on brand new coaches, or like, I don't think Sean McVay is in any danger despite being 1-3.
No.
So, yeah. What are your thoughts on those 3 guys?
Okay.
Those 3 gentlemen there.
Zach Taylor, I think it could get hot pretty fast. Now, they won against Carolina last week, so they
Against
have their
Carolina.
first win of the year. Yeah. Although Carolina's offense, at least, is a grown-up offense now. Defense is
Yeah.
still Swiss cheese. But, yeah, Zach Taylor is definitely semi-warm. If things continue to go down, if they don't at least make a competitive run in the playoffs, I could see his seat being pretty hot. Doug Peterson, yes. I mean, that seat's on fire to me. To me, that's a matter of when and not if. And, you know, in his press conferences, he's throwing players under the bus and saying, oh, it's not the coaching staff, it's not his offensive coordinator. At a certain point, again, I might be the last one off the Trevor Lawrence bandwagon, and that's fine with me. I want to see this guy with a real offensive mind, someone that can really get the best out of him and make his life a lot easier. I think that if Doug Peterson did not win that Super Bowl in 2018, he probably would have been fired, and he would probably be out of these discussions a while ago. So, yes, Doug's seat is on fire. Daboll's interesting because Daboll, like the Giants, I think compared to what people expected out of the Giants, they at least look a little better than expected. You're kind of getting...
So, interestingly enough, Malik Neighbors is out this week.
Yes, with a
That-
concussion. Get back soon.
that might change the outlook of that team
Yes.
real quick if he misses significant time.
Hopefully he's back there. I think they said he was progressing through the protocol, but he's not going to clear it in time. So hopefully he's back next week. So, yeah, but like they beat the Browns again. Beating the Browns, not
They've got
anything to write home
Seattle
about.
this week.
Yeah, Seattle's gonna be tough. Because I'm very high on, or I'm higher than most on Seattle, offensively and defensively. That's a tough matchup.
Kenneth Walker, incredible game.
Kenneth Walker, like we talked about, Ryan Grubb as their offensive coordinator. They've got Geno Cook with those weapons, so I think Seattle's tough. But I didn't think I didn't think the Giants were horrendous against Dallas. The kind of unless you get better quarterback play, I don't really know what to expect. I kind of think it's looked better than what I expected outside of Week 1, because Week 1 they got just absolutely throttled by Minnesota, but Minnesota's really good.
Yeah.
Any other hot seat names I could throw out there? My guy Bob Sala in New York. If things go in a bad direction, he could be. I'm not willing to go there yet.
They've got the aforementioned Vikings this week.
Just embarrassing loss at home to the Broncos last Sunday. Who else are we looking at here potentially? People are throwing out Stefanski. To me, I'm getting rid of Watson way before I get rid of a two-time coach
I think
of the
Watson's
year.
the problem.
Before I get rid of a two-time coach of
I
the
think
year that
pretty
made an offense
clearly.
work with Joe Flacco off the couch last year. So I don't get that one. Let me look who else. Loki, and I don't know if he'll get fired this year, but I think my prediction before the season that I was pretty low on the Raiders looks pretty good right now. I know they won last week, but I do not see the rest of the season going all that well, especially with this seemingly imminent Devontae Adams trade.
situation.
So we'll see about that. Let's see, the rest of the division. No. No. Oh, Eberflus. I know they're 2-2.
Yeah,
But if
I
Caleb
didn't listen
Williams-
because they're 2-2, but
If-
they've got Carolina this week as well.
But if Caleb Williams doesn't look like he's progressing like he should throughout the season, I think
If they get Andy Dalton to this week, that's not going to be a good look.
And then hot seat adjacent to me might be Mike McCarthy.
Sure, I don't think there's a chance he gets fired in season.
No, I
It's
agree
really
with that.
just about the
to
final
me,
result.
honestly, when it comes to hot seat, it's Doug Peterson and then everyone else.
Yeah,
Like
I
Doug-
think that's fair.
I think Doug might get fired within the next month.
They might need that to stop the bleeding at this point.
All right, let's finish this off. You've got some great trivia
Trivia.
lineup for us this week.
All right, these are all on
close the
theme
laptop,
this
make sure.
week.
No cheating.
All right, so question 1.
Okay.
So
Wait, sorry, what's the theme?
it's all just episode themed.
Okay.
So episode 1, question 1. Karl Anthony Towns has the 8th most 3-pointers made in a season by a 7-footer. Can you name the rest of the players in the top 10 for 3-pointers in a season 7 foot or taller?
So it's not 9 different players; it's just 9 different spots.
No, 9 different players. So some guys were repeats. I went with the top 9 players.
Okay. All right. Give me 2 minutes.
Most of them are active.
Okay. Dirk.
Dirk's one.
Okay. Most of them are active. Embiid.
So Embiid is not on here.
Okay. Jokic.
Also not on here.
Porzingis.
Yes.
Okay. Most of them are active. 7-footers, 3-pointers made.
So
In
there,
a
you get three guys that are not active.
3 that are not active, and Dirk was one of those 3.
Well, he was a 4th.
Oh, he was a 4th. Okay. All right. Let's go. Man, this is actually.
I'm
pretty-
interested if you can get the guy who's number 1 all time. He's got 200 in a season. 7-footer, he's active.
He is active.
Not a stereotypical big man that you would think of. I mean, obviously they're all shooters. But
Yeah. 7-footer, active. This is a wild guess. I don't know if you played enough. Is Matt Bonner on this list?
No,
Okay.
not
Red
Matt
Rocket.
Bonner. I can start giving
Brook
hints
Lopez.
if you want. Brooke Lopez is on here. He's not the number 1, but he's
Brook
on
Lopez
there.
is not the number 1. Is Vucevic on there?
No,
Okay. Miles Turner.
no.
This is
I'm
interesting.
not sure he's 7 foot. Is he?
He's close. He's not. Let's see. Horford?
No.
Man, this is a good question because this is tough.
You want a few hints?
Yes, please.
Two did it last year, both very young.
Two did it last year, both very young. It's Wemby?
Yes.
Okay.
And
7 footers.
who goes with Wemby?
Huh?
Who goes with Wemby?
Who goes with Wemby? What do you mean?
They're often compared. They're counterparts in the West.
Why am I tripping out on this? Who goes with Wemby? They're often counterparts. Oh, Chet.
Chet.
I didn't realize Chet was 7 foot.
Oh yeah, that dude's big.
I thought you might have been 6'10" or whatever. Okay, how many do I have left?
1, 2, 3, 4.
I have 4 left.
2. Oh no, 3 not active, 1 active. Again, the all-time leader, active.
What, the all-time? Okay, let me get the all-time leader, and then I'll
Plays in the West.
Plays in the West.
The 3 not active guys are not
Markkanen?
obvious. Yes. Lowry's number 1, 200 in a season.
Okay.
The 3 not active guys are not obvious at all.
Okay. Hit me with them.
Channing Frye,
Okay.
lethal shooter, Spencer Hawes,
Wow.
Shout
would
out.
never have gotten that.
and notable bust Andrea Bargnani.
Good
Who's
question.
up there? This one is kind of more fun than anything. You're probably going to need hints on this one. But
Okay.
So Pete Alonso, known for getting hit by a lot of pitches.
Yep.
He's gotten hit by 21 pitches in a season twice. Can you name the other 4 players who have done that? At least 21.
Craig Biggio.
No.
Wow. Craig Biggio is like the first guy I think of.
Not in a season.
Are any of them active?
No.
None of them are active.
Let's start giving you a hint.
Okay.
One guy did this in 2007, and there is a pretty obvious reason why people would want to hit him.
Alex Rodriguez.
Yes. That's a good hint. One guy, suspiciously in the steroid era, hit 50 home runs one season.
Brady Anderson.
Yeah.
Okay.
He did it in 96. The all-time leader, I'll be honest, this 4th guy, I don't know him. But the all-time leader is one of my favorite guys from the late 90s. I'm just going to go ahead and say it's Andres Galarraga.
Big Cat. Okay.
And number 4 is Mr. Richard Hidalgo,
Doggo. Okay.
who did this in 2000.
Astros.
I have
legend,
no
played-
memory of this man, but
Astros,
Astros
legend.
legend
He played for the
indeed.
Mets very briefly. I remember. that.
Astros legend indeed. Question 3. Obviously, we saw Kirk Cousins go for 500 yards last night.
Oh man.
First since 2021. Can you name every quarterback with a 500-yard game? And I'll give you the 2 pre-merger were Norm Van Brocklin and Y.A. Tittle.
Okay. How many names are on here?
There's some repeats. It's happened 27 times, but there's a few repeats.
Okay.
And one is Kirk, and the other 2 I just gave you. So
Okay.
there are
Every
a few
quarterback with a
repeats.
500-yard game.
Yeah.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers.
I don't think Rodgers is on here. Rodgers
That's
is
shocking,
not on
actually.
here.
Peyton Manning.
Peyton, also, I don't believe is on here.
Wow, that's wild. Tom Brady.
Yes.
Okay. Brett Favre.
That's shocking to me that Favre is not on here.
Favre is not. Wow.
He's not.
Drew Brees.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Ben Roethlisberger.
Breeze was
definitely.
on here twice. Roethlisberger is on here 4 times.
Yes, I was gonna say. Ben had some wild games. Just throwing the ball 65 times. Or seemingly 65. Phillip Rivers.
Yes.
Okay.
Rivers
How,
made it.
how we doing?
You got quite a few left.
Okay.
Obviously, most of these guys are pretty recent.
Is John Elway on there?
Elway, no.
Marino.
Marino's on here.
Okay.
Did it in 88.
Most of these guys are pretty recent. Okay.
There's another guy from that. Well, 2, 3 from Marino's era.
Jim Kelly.
No.
Warren Moon.
Yes.
Okay. Ken O'Brien, Jets legend.
No.
No. Okay. Another guy from that era.
Really 2.
Phil Simms.
Yep. You got another lefty in there?
Boomer.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Okay. And then the rest are recent, basically.
There's two more. One that you're probably not going to get. One from 2000. His name has a lot to do with Memphis.
His name has a lot to do with Memphis. What do you mean has a lot to
A little house in Whitehaven. The year 2000.
Oh. Look. Is this a Graceland reference?
Uh-huh.
I'll come back to it. Okay. Recent guys. How many recent guys are we talking?
There are three gentlemen here that are four that are active.
4 that are active that have
Yes.
a 500-yard game. Okay.
The rest are pretty. Oh,
Does
there's a
Russell
fifth
Wilson
active. I
Does
missed.
Russell Wilson have a
No,
500-yard game? He does not.
Not
okay.
Russ. There's 5 active. I missed one.
Josh Allen?
No.
Mahomes.
No. Surprisingly.
This is shocking. Burrow?
Burrow did it. He was the most recent before Kirk.
Okay. He's the most. That was in 2021, you said?
Yep.
Does Stafford have a 500-yard game?
Yes. Stafford's here. Did
Does
it in
Matt Ryan have a
2012.
500-yard game?
Yes.
Okay. Cook it a little bit. Does Derek Carr have a 500-yard game?
Yes. Did it in 2016.
Okay. All right. How many more active?
There's a famous. There's a famous game on here.
Oh, golf.
Well, no, that's not. Yes, it was
But
a
not
different.
the
It was a
Monday
different
night
game
game.
actually. Yeah.
But not the Monday.
I just assumed that was it, but it wasn't.
Okay. Any more actives?
One more active,
One more active.
and then I'll probably give you the rest of these.
Please.
Did it October 2020 against the Browns?
October 2020 against the Browns.
They lost. Actually, a lot of these are losses because
Yeah, because
you
usually
throw
when you're
for
throwing that
yards.
much, there's a reason. October 2020 against the Browns. Okay, hold on here. That's back off. Not Kyler, is it? No. Let's see. Oh, real quick, this name just came to mind. Is Andrew Luck on here?
No.
He's not. Okay. October 2020 against the Browns. And Tua doesn't have a 500-yard game? Interesting. 500 yards is a lot,
I
man.
think he came close.
500 yards is a lot of yards. Okay, I'm done.
So the most recent was Dak.
Oh,
Did it in
dog.
2020. 2013, Tony Romo. 2012, Matt Schaub. Shout out.
Wow, true. Okay.
Eli Manning did it once. The 1982 gentleman, Vince Ferragamo. And
Would not
the
have gotten it.
2000 guy that I gave you the most beautiful hint for was Elvis Gerbach.
Would not have gotten that either. I feel like I did pretty well with that one. Those are good questions, though. Keep me on my toes. All right, we got to get out of here, though, because our 3:30 crew has to get ready to make sure that show makes some television magic. So another great episode of Fast Five Sports in the books. We'll be back next week, hopefully with Griffin, but at the very least with us two. For Jacob Gallant, I am Matt Infield. Remember, tonight, Friday Football Fever preview coming up at 6. Full edition with all the games tonight at 10 right here on Action News 5. But for now, we're out.